One of the most important things that I discovered as an autistic person going through high school was that it's so important to have an advocate on your side. For meltdowns, another definition probably would be helpful because I think with meltdowns, a lot of the time they can be a little bit misinterpreted or misdiagnosed as an anxiety attack, a panic attack, maybe a personality disorder or a mental health issue. It can be covered up quite a bit. I had quite a bit of panic attacks before realizing that they were autistic meltdowns. And another important thing to mention is that not everyone experiences those large emotions the same way. A lot of the time, meltdowns is more of an external expression, whereas some people will experience that a lot more internally. And that term for that would be shutdown. But a lot of the same feelings, a lot of the same triggers. And the most important thing with that is working on meltdown preventions, working on meltdown recoveries, working on a concrete plan for when those do occur. And a really important thing to remember there is that meltdowns are an inherent part of the autistic experience. Meltdowns do not mean you've failed as a parent, that you have failed as an autistic person, and they're going to happen no matter what, even if you do all of the prevention in the world. And that's why it's really important to have that recovery plan so that you can be able to support the autistic person during the meltdown. Sensory seekers and avoiders. So a lot of the time, autistic people require more stimuli. Sometimes they require less stimuli. And that can be varying from autistic person to autistic person, but it can also kind of vary across neurodivergencies. For example, ADHD and autism can be a little bit incompatible in a way where ADHD, you can have a lot more need for that stimulation, vocal stimming and all that kind of stuff, whereas an autistic person may be a little bit more sensory avoidant. So it's important to make sure that you're accommodating all of the different sensory profiles that could be existing in one household. Safe spaces for autistic people, stim toys, headphones, glasses, a space for someone who has higher needs for stimulation to express themselves and feel comfortable in this way. And having both can be really difficult. I'm someone who has both autism and ADHD, and in that way, I have to find a balance of sensory stimuli and not being understimulated, and making sure that I'm also accommodating aspects that are sensory avoidant. I have a partner who is ADHD, and he dominantly will need a lot more stimuli than I do. That can be a little difficult to balance, but it's something that definitely needs to be a conversation. School refusal. I guess for school refusal, it's difficult for me to comment on this as much because I am someone who school was a little bit different looking. I didn't go or attend school as often as the average person, but I did quite well academically anyways. And that, to me, I think brings up the issue of what part of that environment is being avoided. Is it a sensory issue that's being avoided? Is it a social issue that's being avoided? Is it an academic issue that's being avoided? And then working to accommodate those specific avoidances rather than just throwing out school altogether. One of the most important things that I discovered as an autistic person going through high school was that it's so important to have an advocate on your side. And that advocate being my mother. She was so pivotal to me getting through school, and she pushed and pushed and pushed for my accommodations and my needs, and really helped create a lot of education and awareness in that environment that is definitely needed. I mean, not all teachers and principals are going to have that education and that awareness of autism or neurodivergencies. And so it's kind of falls on the parent to be able to do that advocacy for your child.
I think that what you said, Jane, around understanding which piece of school is being avoided and then making sure that we do think about how to support and accommodate whatever that specific challenge is, whether it's academic, whether it's social, whether it's sensory, whether it's all of them. And at the same time, when we're working with school refusal is often about avoiding the stressors that are presented during the school day, whether it's social, sensory, or academic. The problem is that if we avoid school altogether, we're often not able to get our basic needs met for some social for connection, for getting outside, for overcoming challenge. All of these things bring well-being into our lives. And so one of the things that I often say to clients when I'm working with families is it's my job, your parents' job, the school's job, and your job to work together to make sure that we understand the things about school that are hard and that we're accommodating you. And it's your job to show up and be willing to be uncomfortable sometimes and to push yourself sometimes. We're not going to go, often black and white thinking is a big part of how sometimes the autistic brain can think. It's like school is good or school is bad. And there are parts of school that are essential to well-being. And so it's about how do we address the parts of school that are hard and accommodate, whether that's, you're taking certain classes online and you're only in school for part of the day. That would be more of like a high school or a post-secondary education, that you have safe spaces there, these kinds of things. But, allowing you to stay home and play video games all day, not have social connections, not move your body, that's not good for you either. So yes, we understand, and this is the affirming piece, how hard it can be to be at school. And at the same time, here's the expectations and what accommodations do we need? And that's sort of the pieces of school refusal that I'm often looking at. And also, what are we avoiding? But also, if you are a parent whose child is avoiding school, what is competing with going to school? So if a child is not going to school, what is school can be tough and we want to accommodate there, but are video games available all day when we're not at school? Right. So being able to look at it from that perspective too. How do we need to accommodate? What is competing with attendance? How do we push, but not push too far? Again, the topic of this is tension and finding balance, because these aren't always easy answers and it does require some thoughtfulness and openness. But those are sort of the buckets that we want to think about when we have a school refusal situation.